Hey everyone, welcome to the Tennis and Bagels podcast. I am Andre, your host for today, and I am here with Owen, as Vansh is probably too busy working at the Dallas Open as we record this today on a Wednesday. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's been a while since we did one of these, but yeah, always good to talk to you.
Yeah, for sure. And we're coming off a little later, of course. Like it's been a week and a half now after the Australian Open, but I feel like obviously like as the first biggest tournament of the season, like one on the fourth, like comes in like second half of January, so it's pretty early. And things linger, and narratives get started, and opinions start forming about the 2025 season. And right now we are still a little bit of a ways before we get to the Sunshine Double, so we can. I feel like it's still pretty safe to reflect a bit on the players, and what do we think about like who's on a rise, who's on a downward path, and like how do we feel like about this first half of the 2025 season. So I just wanted to ask you if you have any thoughts about anyone specifically, or a list of players um, that are doing well or not well at all, or things like that.
Sure. I guess my mind first goes to Madison Keys, who won the Australian Open, because her run was like as good of a run at a major as I've seen in like a really long time. Like she beat Sabalenka, Swiatek, and Rybakina, who like not too long ago were considered like the big three of the WTA, and she beat all of them, and then she also beat Svitolina and Collins. So just an unreal run, and the fact that she did it so soon after making like a change to her racket and a change to her mindset, sort of like taking the pressure off of herself to win a major a little bit. I like on paper it seems sort of like a flash in the pan, like your classic like one
Mhm.
time major winner, but the fact that it came like so directly after these changes that she made, like I feel like she could have a seat at the top table now. So I'm really curious. Like I want to see her play these top players again, and I want to see if she can back this up because like as we saw when she hits the ball inside the court, it's very difficult to do anything. So yeah, I thought like great final with Sabalenka too, great semi with Swiatek. I got to be in the stadium for the last set of that, and it was unreal. Um, and generally, the women's tournament I thought was so much better than the men's. But yeah, what were your thoughts on it? Like, do you also think Keys can like potentially win another one or be like a consistent top player this season?
Yeah, I I think that because of Key's history, I think it's in on a positive side, by the way. I feel like because of her history, it felt a lot less to me like a one slam thing. I feel like it felt more like potential. Like it felt like it's something that like so many people have been saying like you should have a slam by now, or like she has all the potential in the world to win. And she's gone on to like win titles before where she was basically unplayable. And I feel like one of the biggest things with Keys was really just the fact that like if she could turn it on and do it for like a couple days straight, she was pretty good. She was very much like a top five player. But on the days that she was just, like, a little bit off, or, like, if something, like, went wrong, like, in a match or something, she just kinda felt like she hit a wall, and she couldn't really play, like, well at all. She was just, like, really not like herself. It was almost like she kinda checked out. So I feel like because of that, it just kinda, like, really it was tough to gauge, like, when she was going to play well, when she was not going to, and because of that, it made also really difficult to win a slam, which you have to, be pretty sharp for 2 weeks. And sometimes I would say, like, even, like, the day off that you get may not even help all that much because, yeah, you can rest physically, but sometimes you just kinda get off the mindset. So I feel like that was a pretty big, win for her, and I think that my opinion is that instead of it being, like, just the one thing, is that it's just going to kind of, you know, take the monkey off her shoulders, like, just, something that, like, she kinda needed it, and, there's no more doubt. She changed a lot of things. They worked. So I feel like she can keep the mindset and she can keep the playing. So I do imagine that she has maybe another big title run. I think it's this time around, at the very least, if she loses, it will be because somebody played better than her and not because something, off just happened. And I do think, by the way, that like when she lost to Sabalenka in that semifinal a couple of years ago was in part because Sabalenka played really well, but I also would say that he's didn't play her best the entire tie breaks and everything. So I think that this time is going to be different. I feel like people will have to take it out of her hands this time.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the semi and the final, we saw how hard it is to do that because, Swiatek had a match point on her serve for the match, and Sabalenka, like, got it to a 3rd set,
Yeah,
was holding serve pretty dominantly throughout the 3rd set until she got broken in the last game, and generally there, like, at the end of that 3rd set, you would expect, like, the two-time defending champion to be the one who pulls it out at the end, and instead Keys, like, plays this return game where she hits, like, 2 winners, and just takes the racket out of Sabalenka's hands, including on the match point. Uh, so yeah, I think that was the thing that impressed me the most. Like, the semi with Iga, I did not think she was gonna win that match until the last point. Like, the whole time I was like, "This is just shaping up like another one of those, like, tragic Madison Keys losses," like the semifinal you mentioned where, like, forget not playing her best in the tie breaks, she let that one, like, 6-0, 5-3.
that's true.
And against Iga, like, yeah, even when she had the break points, it was just sort of like Iga is gonna do what Iga does and, like, find a way to pull this out, and then Keys, like, beat her, and I was like, "Oh my god," like, I genuinely did not expect that on any level, and the final too, I thought Sabalenka was gonna find a way through, so, yeah, I think, it was an amazing run, so and that sort of because of the things we talked about, I feel like, yeah, she might be able to avoid some of, like, the traditional stumbling blocks after you win your first major. Like, she's got a ton of experience already, like, she's not that young. She, like we talked about the mindset change, and so I kinda wonder if she might just be able to, like, continue going at full speed. I'm really interested to see that.
Yeah. Where do you think she has like the best chances of like getting to another slam win? At first I was thinking like US Open. But then I'm like, well, it's always tough to predict the US Open after the Australian Open because it's so far away. And there's so much tennis to be played before then. So and my guess would probably be Wimbledon, but it's also on grass, so it's like kind of like is the surface change going to do any good? So yeah, it's tough to imagine for me like which slam would she have like which which slam would she have the best chance of like actually having another deep run and maybe even winning?
I would still say the US Open because she's done well there in the past. Like, maybe the crowd can, like, get in your head a little bit there because, home slam, but it might also help lift her up. Yeah, like, probably Wimbledon over the French Open because she doesn't move all that well, but then again, like, Yelena Ostapenko won the French Open in 2017. Like, Keys' style is so devastating, she hits the ball so well that, like, if she's playing well, like, um, I would never say, like, she could not win the French Open. Like, if that style is working well, it will work anywhere. So, yeah, I don't know, I feel like I don't know, calling her, like, a contender everywhere feels like a bit of a stretch just off this one tournament, but I could certainly see that.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned like Ostapenko in the French Open. And not that I don't have anything to say really about her, but like just coming back to the actual French Open now that we have a much bigger and considerable wall at that tournament, I find that, like, I would say, would you and considering how Swiatek did, that almost she almost beat, Madison Keys in what's probably, Keys's best surface. Um, I don't know, like, what are your thoughts, like, I guess, on Swiatek? She probably still, like, the big favorite for Roland Garros, but, we obviously need to get back to the clay, before we say much about it, but, I feel like there's, like, less doubt than not, but, um, yeah, like, what are your thoughts on Swiatek herself, like, after the Australian Open? Like, is she coming for the hard courts again? Like, what's the biggest difference, I would say, like, between, her extremely dominant self, like, in 2022, where she obviously didn't do so well at the Australian Open, but she did very well everywhere else. to now, I'd say.
Well, I think she made the semis at the Australian Open in 2022, right? That was her best performance
That's true.
professional this.
Didn't she lose to
She lost to Collins.
Collins? Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting with her because through 5 rounds, I thought she looked incredible. Like I was texting you and Bonch, like if she played Sabalenka in the final based on their form through the first 5 rounds, I didn't even think it was gonna be competitive necessarily if they continued to play that well, and then, Sabalenka went up a gear in the semis and Swiatek lost to Keys. It's a bad loss, like,
Mm.
match point up on your serve in a major semifinal, where you're trying to make your first, where, like, your biggest, kind of problem, I guess, in the last couple of years has been losing early at the majors, outside the French Open. Yeah, that final, that would have been enormous if she could have, made it there, and I think I mean, as we saw, Sabalenka was beatable too, so I think that one's really, really gonna hurt. I mean, that said, Blake Clay is her kingdom queendom, and, she's like, even if she doesn't turn out to be, like, as successful as Nadal there, she has that Nadal thing where, like, she's gonna be favored at the French Open every year until she's, like, 35. Uh, yeah, of course she is the favorite, but, I could see someone else winning. I mean, last year, she was a point away from going out in the 2nd round. The year before that, she was down a break late in the 3rd set in the final against, Muchova. Um, so, um yeah, like, big favorite, but not invincible, and I would love to see if someone like Sabalenka or even Keys or another top player, even Coco. I think Coco's made massive improvements, like, even in the last few months, could make, like, a serious challenge to her this year.
Yeah. And I guess, like, on the topic still, like, 'cause we were mentioning how, um, Keys has, like, this super big game, like, flat shots and, just power on the ground strokes everywhere and, like, good serve. We have now, like, I guess, like, if she ends up joining, like, maybe the top 5, which I think is just pretty close to, I believe, um, we would have, like, maybe Rybakina, Sabalenka as, like, extremely big hitters, and, Świątek struggles, in a way, against, like, big hitters, like that, and she's basically the only one who has, like, playing, like, well, I guess Coco has a different style too, but, like, in terms of, like, um, I guess contenders, like, for Świątek as she tries to get back to her number 1. It's she's I would say Keys is probably a big obstacle that's just kind of, like, wedged herself, in the narrative this year. 'Cause
Yeah.
yeah, like, Świątek already had to deal with, Sabalenka and Rybakina and, players that do like this, like, do this kind of, playing style. And if Keys becomes, like, a consistent player that goes deep in tournaments as well, like, I feel like things could get, even more, I guess, worrying a bit for Swiatek, I would say, maybe, in the fast courts.
That's a good point, yeah, because, I mean, even though Swiatek has done a little better against Rybakina lately, you always get the sense that she kinda hates playing against her because of the
Mm.
matchup, and, yeah, like, everyone who's taken her out in the majors recently has been, like, a huge hitter who had a great day, and, yeah, Keys is kind of like the epitome of that. Yeah, like, I think and there was a big stretch of that semifinal at the Australian Open where Keys just, like, ran over her, I think. Even though she lost the first set, she was kinda, like, getting her teeth into the match by the end of it, and then she, like, dominated the 2nd set. So, yeah, I agree with you, like, that's gonna be another player who Swiatek definitely won't wanna play. I think on clay, she would probably have her way with Keys, but everywhere else, I think it's probably never gonna be an easy match.
Mhm. Yeah. And, just talking about, like, getting back to Sabalenka, I don't think we have said many words about her, but, um, I would say, like, one thing that impressed me, I guess, like, on her, I think that's kind of been a bit more of, like, her trademark for a little while now, but she'd always seemed to be super happy. So I guess, like, just every time she's winning a match, she's, like, smiling and she always feels it always gives, like, a vibe that she's feeling positive. Um, and now that she's number 1, she's won 3 Grand Slams by now, almost won another one. Granted, when she lost this one, she was extremely pissed to the point where I don't know if she broke a racket, but she slammed a few.
Yeah,
Um, so um, I don't know, like, I feel like that's kind of like a question mark for me, like, it appears to me that she is feeling good, that it's even though she lost, she is able to, like, go back there and just not necessarily doubt herself and just kind of, like, take that as you know, a loss that happens. It's an extremely painful loss, but, like, it's not inevitable that you'd lose a tennis match in your career.
yeah,
Um and I would say, like, even the frustration that she showed, it feels like just the frustration of, like, "I should have won this, but, it
yeah.
was taken away from me." It's just, like, just kind of like, "I hate this feeling of losing." But it doesn't necessarily feel like she doubts herself. So I feel like we can still see a lot of number 1 Sabalenka for this year. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I partially disagree. I think,
Mm,
like, in terms of not doubting herself, I agree in the sense that she backs her game and she can go big on any point, but, for, like, the first five matches of this tournament, I thought her first serve was, like, completely absent. Like, she was spinning it in or she was, like, missing it, and, she was getting broken, like, multiple times in a row in several of the matches. I thought until the semi with Badosa, and, not including the destruction of Andre, but I thought she looked really vulnerable. So, like, that said, the fact that she was, like, 2 games away from winning the title, regardless, is insanely impressive to me. Again, I thought, I was kind of expecting her to get upset because of how she was playing, and, like, I thought she was gonna lose to either Goff or Swiatek if she didn't get upset, and yet, like, both those players lost before her despite them being in, like, much better form on average in the tournament, but, like, I'm really impressed that she got as far as she did, despite all that, but, on the final, I think that is gonna hurt a lot as well because, she was going for 3 in a row, and, I think even though she said in one of her post-match interviews, like, how much that meant to her, I think she was still downplaying it a little bit because to be in a club with, like, Monica Seles and Martina Hingis is an enormous deal, and it's the kind of thing that, like, you only get the chance to do, like, once, like, winning 3 in a row, like, I mean, first of all, you have to start over once you lose, but, um, like, your competition's gonna get better, you're gonna get older. It's the sort of thing that, like, you only have one chance to do, and I feel like she knew that, and that this was her chance to really, like, make herself a legend, which, she probably will get there anyway in some other form, but I think she, like, keenly felt the loss of that chance to win 3 in a row, and so I completely understand her frustration, and, maybe for some people, like, aesthetically, you don't wanna see the losing player, like, smash the racket at the end of a major final, but, like, I don't know, I was fine with it, and her speech was awesome, in the trophy ceremony, so, yeah, I mean, I think she's still sorry, I'm rambling, but I think my hot take kind of on, like, Sabalenka is I think she's a threat to win, like, any tournament, on tour. Like, I think that if she is able to, like, truly, like, maximize everything in her game for an entire season, I don't think her winning, like, the calendar Grand Slam is outside the realm of possibility, and I think she's the only player on tour who evens it out. Um, I genuinely think she is a threat at every tournament, on any surface, but I also think the rest of the tour is starting to play her a little bit better, and I think she's also learning that it doesn't get easier once you get to number 1. Um, so yeah, I think and also just with the WTA being so deep, it's so hard to hold that spot for long, um, and ego wants it back, so it'll be really interesting. I think she'll win another major this year, but, um, I think it's kinda only gonna get harder to be Sabalenka, and it'll be interesting to see if that kinda propels her forward or, causes her to, like, plateau a little bit.
yeah, that's interesting. I feel like we're gonna get, like, some good answers like once we hit like Miami and Indian Wells. I think it's gonna be interesting, especially because I really think that given that Swiatek plays really well in at Indian Wells and Sabalenka tends to do better in Miami, I do feel like Sabalenka will try her best to get to that final and see if she can play Swiatek. If not, she'll obviously try to win it anyways. But if she plays Swiatek, I think it's going to be a good moment for her to try to like assert being number one over Swiatek, and Swiatek a great opportunity to put herself in a position where she says like I'm still here and I will claim this back type of thing. And obviously I'm thinking way too far ahead at this point, but like that's obviously something that I kind of just really want to see at this point as well. Like we were kind of kind of robbed of a Swiatek Sabalenka final of the Australian Open. Obviously, like best for Key, she was amazing, but it definitely was. It definitely leaves like a little bit of that taste of like what could have been like if Swiatek reaches the final and plays Sabalenka there.
Yeah, I mean, this is now the second time that, like, we've been 1 point away from getting that matchup in a major final, and, like, each player has, like, blown a match point, and lost. So, yeah, it's starting to get to that, like, Federer and Nadal at the US Open levels, but, like, they're 23 and 26. I think it's still gonna happen. Um, yeah, I mean, and I don't know, I think I agree with you about Indian Wells, like, that could be, like, the site of, like, where they play next, but I also think Sabalenka is a pretty major-centric player. Like, I think last year see, was it last year or the year before that Rybakina just, like, destroyed her at Indian Wells? Like, I feel like Sabalenka like, pretty clearly plays better at the majors than she does at the
Yeah,
other tournaments,
this is true.
which I think is a very good thing for her and something that is not true of all players. Like, it's not true for Swiatek, at least not yet. But I think it does mean that, like, I don't expect like, even though I said I think Sabalenka could win anywhere, I'm not really expecting her to, like, go on a run, like, dominate. I if I were her, I would be focusing on the French Open already because that's the one where, like, if she wins, that makes a meaningful difference to her
Yeah.
legacy. I think, like, you're not really given what she's accomplished already, she's not really gonna prove anything by winning, like, the Sunshine Double.
Yes, true. Yeah, you're actually right though. Like I think it was just even last year where Rybakina destroyed her in the Brisbane final, right? So that kind of like really follows as well. So yeah, let's like wait and see. I guess like just the last player that I wanted to touch on the WTA side was I guess Goff. Like, what are your feelings on her? I rambled a lot about her in the video that I've made. Um, if this channel was like a couple thousands of people big, I would have probably gotten a lot of negative comments about like what I said. But like, what are your thoughts on her? Then I'll try to explain a little bit of like what I think.
Well, before she lost to Badosa, I kinda thought she was gonna win the tournament
Mm.
because Sabalenka wasn't playing very well. I mean, the match she played with Iga at the United Cup, I still cannot get out of my head because of how well she played. Like, that was the kind of match where, like, just like, even though their head-to-head is still insanely lopsided in favor of Swiatek, like, watching that match, you would have thought, like, "Man, it's gonna be, like, really hard for Iga to, like, beat Coco again," which is a crazy thing to say because it's still completely, one-sided, but I mean, I think she defends better than any player on the WTA has for a really long time and maybe ever. Like, that defense is gonna be a headache for, like, any player because she is such a nightmare to hit through. It's insane. Um, and I thought the forehand looked a lot better at the United Cup. So, like, all of that, with all of that in mind, I was pretty disappointed in her, level against Badosa. Like, I thought that was a match she was gonna win, and I thought the semi with Sabalenka was gonna be, like, the match of the tournament, and probably decide, like, who was going to, win the title, but and that turned out to be wrong on multiple levels, but, yeah, I think, um, she seemed to kinda, like, take the loss in stride, which surprised me a little bit because I felt like she had a real chance to win that title, and so I imagine she did as well, but maybe it was just a bad day and she's better at processing those than I would be. But yeah, let's get your thoughts on her. I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like saying like the way that I see Coco at times is just she plays extremely well. Like she's like god levels of like tennis, number one worthy. When she plays a lot of players that are below her ranking. Or
Ye
players that she doesn't have already like a history against like Swiatek or I think she has a solid head-to-head against Rybakina, but it just kind of feels like something in her, and even when she plays like other players, like I feel like there seems to be a comfort in Goff playing from behind, like she's just I feel like I wanna see her, running more like, running away with, like, sets in games, like, faster.
yeah.
And, I feel like for her, she hits a big serve. She does not have, like, a vulnerable first serve, for example. She does have, like, her issues, like, they're mostly mental, like, with, the double faults and stuff, but and obviously the forehand, there are good days and bad days, but I do feel like sometimes she grabs a break, and she doesn't hold to it, or she just, like, falls into, like, an early break, and I've seen a few times even, like, during this tournament where she fell, a break, and she kind of, was, like, down, like, 5-3 or 4, and the other player saved for the set or something, and then she kinda broke and came back. So I feel like it's great that she returns extremely well. I feel like she should do that forever, but I feel like she should be able to hold her serve a little bit easier. I don't know if whatever I'm saying makes that much sense, but, like, in my head, I just feel like I'm kinda missing a little bit of that, like, um, I am at the same level as you, and I am going to beat you, if you don't play
Right.
your best. I feel like a lot of the times it's just like, she kind of when she plays, I just get this feeling, this vibe, that she feels that she's not as good, as, like, when Swiatek plays her best and when Sabalenka plays her best, and I wanna see from Coco that she is as good as those 2 players, or maybe just, like, if not as good, is, like, an infinitesimal amount, like, less good, and that, like, it's still gonna come up to, like, a few games, but yeah, I do feel like she still doesn't necessarily and it feels weird saying this, like, after all that she's accomplished, I still believe that she doesn't necessarily believe in herself as much as she should.
Okay. That's very interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, I could I definitely see how you would feel that way. Like, I think part of it is, I mean, she rarely, like, dictates with her game, right? Like, a lot of it is, like, running to
Yeah,
defend what her opponent is doing.
yeah,
And, like, she's very good at that. But, yeah, like, sometimes it seems like she's maybe not as in control of a match as her rivals. Like, I could definitely see that. But,
yeah.
I mean, at the same time, I think she's beaten Swiatek and Sabalenka, like, in their most recent meetings, right? So, like, um so, I don't think there's necessarily a belief issue there. In the Badosa match, I do feel like there's a little, like I mean, she totally, like, fought and everything like that, but I was disappointed in the sense that, like, I thought she had kind of figured out how to, not have a day that bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, like, she played worse than I thought she was, like, capable of anymore, which sounds really harsh, but I mean, that is, like I thought she had kind of, solved for, like, those bad days,
Yeah,
and it turns out maybe she hasn't quite yet, and that was probably an unreasonable expectation of mine.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think she's so good,
Mm.
like, I do think that, even if she continues to play, like, really defensively, that could be enough to, like, eventually get to number 1 and win, like, a bucket of majors,
Yeah.
but yeah, like, playing that way also does kinda, like, give a lot of the agency to your opponent, and it could be cool to see her attack more. I think it's just really hard with a forehand that's that
Yeah.
unreliable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely can see that, and the one thing that I keep trying to, like, remind myself all the time is just how young she is. She was, like, what, 20 years old right now?
Yeah, she turns 21 next month. That's the other thing, like, everyone talking about, like, what she needs to change or, like, needs to do this, and you get it with Carlos Alcaraz too. It's like, guys, these players do not need to do anything. they are already like spectacular and are going to win probably more than bad.
Yeah, and I definitely like, it kinda makes me, like, really, even though I said those things, like, it does, like, reminding, like, coming back, is like, "Wait a minute, she's still only 20 years old." Like, I feel like it kinda makes me excited to, like, look back in, like, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, like, looking back at her career is like, what has she achieved? Because I feel like there's so much that she's going to do. I don't even feel like that she can do. I feel like we already know that she can do all those great things, but what she will do, like, I feel like it's definitely a question that, like, it's interesting to think about, and I definitely agree with you. I feel like she does have, like, a bunch of majors, that she will still win. Maybe even she wins another one this year. I feel like she was my prediction to win the Australian Open. Definitely, like, had, like, a bad day against Badosa, but, yeah, I feel like she can come back for the US Open again. She's been to the final the French Open. Shantai could be also still like an obstacle, but if things work out and she does get knocked out of the tournament early, she definitely becomes like one of the favorites. I don't know how much about Wimbledon is always like the toughest slam to predict unless like you come out as Alcaraz and just be like, oh, okay, this guy's a genius on grass. So like everybody else is just kind of like what's gonna happen really. But yeah, it's just it definitely can see like if not this year, definitely next year she will win another slam for sure.
Yeah, and there's no rush as well, right? Like she's so much younger than I mean, she's like 6 years younger than Sabalenka and 3 years younger than Iga, so, like, yeah, I mean, I think she's still, like I think that, there's a totally real chance that she ends up having a better career than both of them,
Yeah.
like, just because she has so much more time, um, so, like, you know, maybe that also doesn't happen, and Iga is, like, 4 majors ahead right now, but, yes, she just has so much time, like, even if she doesn't win a major, like, this season and next season and the season after that, like, I would still buy her stock.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, like, the season after this 2 seasons after now, like, she'll be, like, Świątek's age, right? So, like
Yeah. Yeah, like, here, when's Iga's birthday? Uh, okay, yeah, so Iga's gonna turn 24 in May, so, yeah, she is, like,
yeah,
2 years and 10 months older than Goff. Like, yeah, she has an enormous amount of time.
yeah, it's pretty insane. So yeah, like, now that we've covered, like, most of it, like, if you pass it over to the ATP side, I think you mentioned, I'm not sure if it was off the record of, like, was now, but, like, the, um, the women's tournament was way better than the men's tennis, tournament at the Australian Open. I think one of the biggest reasons for that was just how badly balanced the draw was. I feel like Sinner just kinda had a basic walk in the park, like, obviously, like, it's a professional tennis, I'll always have to throw this out there, like, you play the guy that's in front of you, it's professional tennis, those guys are amazing, et cetera, but, you would never expect, like, for example, Alex de Minaur to beat, Yannick Sinner, and he was in his quarter again, so
Right. Yeah, yeah, and Alcaraz got Djokovic, yeah,
and Zverev.
right. Um, yeah, I mean, so, look, I'm a little biased here because I am, like, a Carlos Alcaraz fan. Like, I really enjoy watching him play. Um, but I also think that just in the sense of, like, what matchups have intrigue and stuff, for for me, kind of, like, all the air went out of the tournament when he lost to Djokovic, and that wasn't because I was like, "Oh, man, like, my guy is out." It was because it was like, are you excited to watch, like, Sinner Shelton, Djokovic Zverev, or, like, any combination of those 2 guys in the final? Like, I don't know, I just don't find them, like, compelling matchups. Like, Sinner, Djokovic, and Zverev are all kinda like the same archetype. Sinner and Zverev in the final, like, they're seeded 1 and 2, but I think that's about as, like, boring a matchup as you can have between tough players, and I think I said to you and Peter that I was, like, dreading that final before the tournament because I didn't think it was gonna be good. Um,
He was
and, like, th those guys are all more fun to watch against Alcaraz than they're fun to watch against each other, and so when Carlos lost, I was just kind of like, "Well, like, what's" well, that's kind of the end of the the things I'm excited for on the ATP. I guess, like, after that, the best potential scenario was, like, a really good final between Djokovic and Sinner, but, we saw Djokovic get hurt, and I expected him to lose to Zverev or not make it through that match because of the injury. And so then you have Zverev against Sinner or Shelton in the final, and, I'm just not really excited for those matches. Like, I was at the tournament, and I attended a few of the matches, and I wrote a story about it for Defector, and, they let me write in a very, like, creative way, and so I kind of had, like, the story finished before the men's final, that just wasn't really a part of it, and I didn't even really watch. I turned it on for, like, the last few games just to see, like, the coronation, but, um, I had no real interest in it, and I think I should say up until the quarterfinals, I thought it was a great tournament, but
Mm.
after that Alcaraz-Djokovic match, which I thought was outstanding and really exciting, and through the grace of a stranger leaving the stadium, in the 4th set, I got to be there, for the last, like, half hour, and that will be, like, that's, like, my best memory of the tournament, so all of that was great, but I think it totally ended with a whimper.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's a I don't know if necessarily I don't wanna say it's a problem, but, like, it definitely becomes harder for Djokovic as he gets older. Like, he's superhuman in so many ways, like, he's, like, almost 38 years old. But then, like, you get, like, into all these, like, big excruciating matches, and Alcaraz is, like, extremely physical, like, as a player. Like, especially if he's playing well, you know that he's gonna push you super far and, like, super hard. So it was always gonna be tough, like, after Djokovic, even if he would beat Alcaraz, like, even if he didn't get injured, it would always be difficult for him after that match. Um, and after that, like, I feel like looking at the way Zverev played Djokovic, and then, looking at I didn't even get to I wasn't even that interested that I didn't, wake up at 3 AM to watch the final. Maybe I'll just try to get, like, some, like, super extended highlights later, but just based off the highlights, you know, Zverev is a product of computational rankings and the fact that, like, obviously, like, you play a boatload of matches over the year, and he does well, like, in the big tournaments that are not Grand Slams. Of course, he made the final of the French Open, but there's no I just can't look at him and see him as, like, the de facto world number 2, like, I don't even think is actually superior to Djokovic. Like, I feel like the fact that Djokovic is below him is just out of the fact that, like, Djokovic has played less, he's got injured a lot last year, but his role number 2 is completely artificial to me. Um, of course, like, Alcaraz has played a huge part in it by playing really garbage tennis at times last year. Um, but, so he's at fault for not putting his ranking higher than what it is right now. Um, but he still won 2 Grand Slams, and Zverev won none.
Yeah.
And he beat Zverev in one of these, and kind of pretty convincingly, I guess, like, in the last 2 sets of that tournament. Um, so yeah, like, Alcaraz is definitely the world number 2. That's definitely the match that we would have liked to see. That's definitely the match that the ATP would have actually liked to see instead. Um, and it's a shame that Djokovic wasn't able to play that final. I feel like I mean, I guess that the semifinal, and just the way that he played, Zverev won that set in a tiebreak, and Djokovic was barely moving. So, I guess that it goes to show exactly what you need to know.
Yeah, like, do you remember I think Zverev said something after the match. He was like, like, "I didn't really notice. Like, I thought he still played pretty well. Maybe I'm just, like, not good enough to, like, beat him even when he's hurt." And I was like, "Yes, like, you think you're being humble, but that's actually just correct." Like,
Yeah, just factual.
yeah, I mean, and if you look at the way Zverev played him too, it was also like he was clearly just trying to, like, extend the match until Djokovic, like, couldn't continue, right? Like, there was no you talk about passivity, and, like, his defense isn't even exciting in the way that, like, Coco Gauff's is. It's like he just, like, stands way behind the baseline with that, like, albatross wingspan, um, just, like, blocking everything back, um, and serving huge. Like, it's a completely negative style of tennis that just cancels out any excitement, and, You know, I did actually think he was gonna be competitive in the final. And, so, you know, kudos to Sinner for beating him that badly because I didn't expect it to be a rout, but
Mm,
yeah, I mean, like yeah, like if you look at the semis and the final, one of the semifinals you had like an 88-minute tiebreak set of just kind of like agonizing, like slow rallies. You had Sinner beating Shelton in straight sets,
mm,
and one of those was exciting, and then you had a straight set final that I don't think was you had a few, like, good rallies, but, um,
yeah.
yeah, I just think that the top of tennis right now is just, like, really, really dark in terms of entertainment,
Mm,
besides Alcaraz. Like, your number 1 is Sinner, who, um, exceptional player, also maybe not the most emotional, reactive guy on court,
yeah.
and so he can be very, I'll say boring. Like, you know predictable is probably a more objective word. Like, you know exactly what he's going to do, um, and he does it repeatedly at a very high level with very little variety. Um, you know, Zverev is number 2, who again, plays an incredibly negative style and has been credibly accused of these really, really awful things, which still makes him, like, super awkward to watch. Um and then you have Alcaraz, and then after that, you have Fritz, who, you know, kudos to how hard he's worked, but, like, I don't think he's
Yeah.
anybody's idea of, like, box office. Um, you have Medvedev, who just seems to be, like, plummeting downhill.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you have, like, Demon and Casper Ruud, who just don't seem to have high enough ceilings to compete, and so I think when you get matches between these top players that don't involve Alcaraz, it's just pretty difficult to get excited about it, at least for me. And that's not just because I like Alcaraz. I think his style and his audacity with his shots and the effects that his tennis has on his opponents is necessary to kind of generate excitement right now. And when that's not involved, I think you just get these very one note kind of colorless matches. And
Mm,
but like I thought TN against Medvedev was more competitive, or sorry, more compelling by orders of magnitude than just about any other match in the tournament besides, Djokovic Alcaraz.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I hope that Tien and Fonseca and Menzik, climb the ladder quickly because I
Yeah.
bet he needs it pretty badly.
Yeah. Yeah, I had some I guess, like, just to give some credit to Shelton, I feel like he's a player that, like, a lot of people love to hate. Uh,
Yeah.
he's also a player that a lot of people just love to love, which is kinda good. Like, he kind of gets, pretty, um he makes fans feel something,
You're
which I think is a good thing, and I feel like to his credit, he played, like, an exceptional first set up to the point where he lost it because like, he kinda choked it out, um,
Yes, I
but
would say
then
until he had set point.
yeah, and then after that, like, it was kind of like a bit of a walk in the park for Sinner. He tried, to kind of, like, wake himself up in the 3rd set, but just didn't really work. It was, like, 6-2, 6-2, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
and I should say, like, to be fair to Shelton, I mean, you think, like, the beginning of both those 6-2 sets were really exciting,
yeah.
and and I actually think that scoreline does not do justice to sort of, like, the effort he put in the level he played at, but I still think that is, like, nobody's platonic ideal of a major semifinal,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wanna believe that Shelton has in him to, like, be able to, crack the top 10 and stay there, at
Mhm,
some point and just, I feel like he has, like, weapons, fashion style, Berrettini style, like, he has, like, a really huge forehand, like, a really huge serve, but he's overall a better player than Berrettini, like, more complete. His
mhm.
backhand has made improvements, he's got a good slice, he moves way better, so I feel like there's no real, tennis-wise reason why he shouldn't be able to, get back to those situations. I think it's but I do wanna say that, like, at least in terms of entertainment value, he's got something, so I would hope that he kind of is able to, actualize, realize his potential, well, at least, like, the potential that a lot of people think that he has. It may not be as big as like when Alcaraz was coming up, was when Sinner was coming up, but like if he's able to like break into the top 5 and it just be a headache to the players like in the top 3 before they win Grand Slams. I think that's already going to be amazing because he does have a tennis and that is entertaining and he does make people feel something, which I feel like Sinner only does so because of the fact that he's Italian, so Italians love him, and uh, and the fact that well, right now he's unfortunately entangled in a bunch of, off court, stuff with the doping case and whatnot. So there's a lot of push and pull about him, but I don't necessarily feel like his personality has much to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point about of how center it's like he might get banned for a year or 2 years soon. But yeah, it's a great point on Shelton. I think and, Arthur Fils is another guy who I would love to see matched against top players. Like, yeah, I think, I enjoy watching Shelton play, and I in that semi against center, I was actually really impressed with, like, his baseline upside is better than I thought it was, if that matches, any indication of what he's gonna look like in the future. Like, he hung in rallies, like, way better than I expected, and some of those exchanges were actually really fun, especially in the first set and the start of the second and third set. Like, like, he rips the forehand down the line and center blocks it back, and then Sheldon, like, sets up a runs around a forehand, and I was thinking of, like, Djokovic and Nadal. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, again, like, if you, so, like, yeah, there were things to like, but yeah, if you just look, those are not well-matched players, at least right now,
Mhm.
like, Shelton is a level below, and so, yeah, I think and, like, I don't wanna be, like, too harsh on Sinner because I can get carried away, like, um, he's insanely popular. I honestly don't think it's just Italy, like, he's one fan favorite
That's true.
for the last, 2 seasons, and I think Spain is more populous than Italy. So, like, clearly it's not just them, but, um, yeah, I mean, just his demeanor on court, it's like he never really changes his facial expression,
Mm.
and again, like, you know what you're gonna get with regards to his tennis, and so I just feel very emotionally detached when I watch him play.
Yeah.
Um, and increasingly, he is not playing people who have a chance to beat him, and so that just kinda adds to that. Yeah, like, if, I really have no idea what he's feeling on court or if he is feeling on court in any real time. Like, what if you count up, like, the biggest shows of emotion, throughout the tournament, I would say, like, the when he won the whole thing, and then probably when he, like, when he beat Runa in the 4th round and he kind of pumped his fist and, like, gritted his teeth because that one was like a battle, but even during that and even when he was, like, sort of getting mad at himself in the early rounds, he was never remotely close to losing, and his matches, sorta like Djokovic's, like, when he was in his prime, they the way they will end, like, sometimes multiple hours before they end, and,
Mhm.
and Sinner is just so much less demonstrative and unpredictable than even Djokovic was, and so yeah, like, this is not to say that, like, he shouldn't have fans or anything like that. Again, like, he's clearly super popular, great player, like, I think he's gonna go down as an all-time great. Um, but it's really hard for me to get, like, viscerally excited when I watch him play, um, which is not true of other, great players, so
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, like, I talk a little bit about the popularity thing, but, just to be honest, as, like, in terms of Sinner's game, I really enjoyed, like, his actual tennis. I think, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I like the fact that he rips forehands and backhands, and I like the way that he moves. I feel like it's exciting to watch in terms of tennis, but it's just, like, the one thing that I will agree with you, it just kinda lets me down, I guess, a bit as a fan. It's just, like, you win, like, a super incredible rally that you had to, like, move mountains to actually get this ball back, and, like, you rid like, an incredible winner that nobody else would have been able to unless they were, like, top 2 in the world, and then, like, he barely reacts to it. It just kind of it's, like, a little deflating. It's just as a fan, just, like, I kind of I'm anticipating, you know, showing my emotion with the player, and obviously, like,
yes.
there's obviously nothing wrong with him doing that, like, it's just maybe his style, but it's just for me, it just it doesn't click at the moment that this happens. It's just like, "Oh, I really wish I could have seen something from you, man," because then it would have made me excited about the point that you just played. But yeah, like, I guess it really is like, I guess, like, maybe my bias of being watching so much of Nadal and Djokovic over the years, and those guys are just, like, bundles of, celebrations and anger on court, like, in different ways. Obviously, Djokovic breaks rackets and Rafa Nadal doesn't, but,
Mhm.
you know, now it's just Sinner is such a different player in that regard, so
Yeah. Yeah, like Djokovic and Nadal, I think you can always feel how hard they're trying. Um,
yeah.
even when and you can relate to that even when their tennis is, like, perfect and impossible to relate to, and Sinner, like, plays that same kind of tennis without telegraphing any of his effort, I feel like.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, as far as his actual shots, like, yeah, I mean, he's incredible offensively and defensively, and I absolutely think it's amazing when he rips a running forehand or plays, like, one of those defensive points, like, he moves so well, but kinda related to what I was saying about, he except against Alcaraz, no one who plays him can even push him. I think, like, so one-dimensional is harsh, but,
Mm.
um I think he doesn't even have the pressure or motivation to really use the net um, or really mix up his offense at all. Like, I think and, like, and I'm not saying he should because, like, if no one's making you do it,
Yeah.
like, um, like, before this started, I was talking to you about how, like, um, I'm making, like, just enough money to sort of, like, get by, like, comfortably, and I'm not, and and, like, even though I should, like, get more work, I'm not, like, sufficiently motivated to do it right now. So, like,
Mm.
I fully understand, like, if this game is, like, more than enough to get you to number 1, um, why mess with it? But
Yeah.
I think his match against Giron in the 3rd round, like, he volleyed so terribly. It was like he was losing almost every point where he came to the net, and he barely came to the net.
Mm.
And like, you rarely see him really hit, like, a sharp angle, like, from the baseline. And when he hits the drop shot, that has gotten a lot better, but I think I think it works for him more because he gets the opponent so far behind the baseline, um, than because he's hitting the drop shot really well. And,
Mm.
and to be clear, I don't mean these as criticisms. I just mean, like, there are things that he could improve, but no one is making him improve those things. And so he wins, I
Yeah.
think, by just kind of, like, through, like, a very, very consistent, fast, heavy, and deep rally ball
Yeah.
that looks pretty close to the same every time. And, yeah, just in terms of, like, you want his matches to kinda carry some intrigue, but, as things are now, you kinda know what all of them are gonna look like ahead of time, or you at least know how he's gonna play them.
Yeah, and I guess just to go full circle on this conversation, like, I guess that's where Alcaraz can come in a sense, because he was the one that is actually beating Sinner. So and he's the one that is actually going to push Sinner, for a while to get better, to do things differently, to get out of his comfort zone because, clearly his game, while it works against Alcaraz, but it hasn't been enough to beat him because Alcaraz has always been able to find answers, to find ways, I guess, to win, not necessarily just answers, but like to find ways to win, the points when he mattered, and so I feel like it's definitely like in desperate need of Alcaraz, finding Sinner more often, so that Sinner can demonstrate some of that improvement that we all know that he's able to make. So yeah,
Yeah, and, I mean, yeah, the fact that they haven't to be clear, the fact that they haven't played more often, it's like 100% Alcaraz's fault. I mean,
yeah, true.
like, the one time Sinner lost first, I think, was, it's like Wimbledon last year, and he was sick against Medvedev.
Mm.
But, like, yeah, I mean, you can't deny that Sinner is, like, way more consistent than Alcaraz and has been way more defendable in the, really since the end of 2023. Um, and so so, like, yeah, I like, if you want more Sinner Alcaraz matches, like, Alcaraz is the one to blame because he's not
That's
um,
true.
he has not been, tournament to tournament living up to his ability, which is why he's number 3 instead of number 2. Like you have to really, really underachieve outside the majors if you win 2 of them and end the year ranked below someone who didn't win any of them. So,
Mm.
yeah, like I can say whatever about, Sinner being, maybe a little flat to watch, but, is like he doesn't need to change anything.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, also, I guess I should say about the fact that he might get banned. That well, like, obviously in a very different way than Zverev, but that makes him a little awkward to watch as well. Like, I think with athletes and sports, like, obviously there are rulings on these things, but, like, like, as a fan, you were never going to know exactly what happened, right? Like,
yeah, it's
um,
true.
and I've started covering boxing in the past year, and, oh my god, the performance enhancing drug scandals in that sport are there's basically a new one, like, every week, and so I think I've just become very, like, disillusioned about, like, when there is one, like, I really struggle to just sort of, like, take the player's excuse, at face value. Maybe Iga is a counterexample to that because she and her team, like, ran tests on the melatonin supplement, um, and the levels of the substance in that were, like, consistent with the levels of substance, like, in her body, and, uh WADA isn't appealing that case, but yeah, with Sinner, there is, like, that, those tests are a little bit of an uncomfortable feeling, when you think about him as a player, but, I mean, yeah, regarding, like, his forehands and backhands, like, yeah, man, there's very little to say that's negative.
Yeah,
He's an incredible player.
yeah, for sure. That's why he's like, what, like 3,000 points ahead of the world number 2 right now, so
More than that, isn't he?
or yeah, I have no idea. I know that he's like a boatload of points, like, his
Yeah,
yeah, it's
so
pretty far
he
from being overtaken right now.
yeah, okay, yeah, so he's almost 4,000 ahead of Zverev and almost
Yeah,
5,000 ahead of Alcaraz.
that's
Um,
wild, yeah.
yeah, man, that's crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, and I guess, do you wanna talk about Novak a little bit?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so, like, as as sort of like a supporter of his, like, how did you feel about his tournament? And, like, like, you had that amazing win over Alcaraz, which I think is honestly one of the best wins of his career, and then and then the run was just kinda over very quickly, and now it seems like
Yeah.
he's not gonna be back for a little while.
Well, yeah, the fact that he's not gonna be back for a little while is just I feel like a lot of things that keep pointing at, a retirement announcement. Maybe I don't wanna say soon because I feel like he will still play the entire season, but maybe by, I don't know, or half, 2026, he might give something.
Okay.
I don't feel like it's gonna come any earlier than that, but, um, it just keeps pointing at the fact that, like, well, Novak is not the same as he used to be anymore, but, like, I guess as a fan, um, when I watch his tournament and watch he's beating Alcaraz, and only later what is that, like, actually got, that I actually informed myself enough to know that he, got injured, in that match or, like, before that match or something, and then by the time that he came against Zverev, he was already injured, um, so that was just kind of that before that, I really had thought that, like, well, maybe that's gonna happen. Maybe he's actually gonna go in and win another slam. I thought it was going to be like, the revival of Djokovic, and I thought it was in a way just, old fan in me, and then, just kind of like old days of like Big Three, just, you know, having Djokovic winning Grand Slams still, like, it would still feel like kind of like clinging on to like the good old days in that sense, but, um it definitely felt like his tournament was, I guess, was positive overall. I don't know necessarily how much more he's going to get injured. I feel like it's getting more and more often, and more serious. So now I'm just like, oh, like how much can I hope that he's going to win another Grand Slam? Like he reached the final of Wimbledon last year, but he wasn't necessarily at the level that he needed to be to actually win it. Is there any other slam that he could possibly win?
Mhm.
I don't know. Like I feel like Ivanch mentioned that, the French Open would be a place that he could excel at, but I just feel like it's too physical at this point. Uh,
Right.
the US Open is always kind of like a bit of an enigma because why has he not done better at that slam? It's a question mark. So it's like, how is he gonna do any better now that he's older? I don't even know. I feel like that's a stretch. So it's either Wimbledon or back at the Australian Open if he has like a good off season. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, the injuries are the thing, aren't they? Because it's now, like, 2 of the last 4 slams that he's not been able to finish, and then the other 2, like, I mean, Wimbledon, Alcaraz destroyed him in the US Open, he lost to Poveren, and so neither of those was, like, a great end result exactly, and I think also to me, it was telling that, like, it wasn't like he injured himself, like, giving the kids a bath like Federer did. It was like he injured himself because he was, like, sprinting to get back an Alcaraz forehand. Like, that's,
Mm,
like, if he's getting injured because of the way he moves, like,
right.
it's the way he moves is kind of, is a pretty important part of who he is as a player, even though the way he's reinvented himself is just continues to be staggering. Like, I don't wanna get too deep in the weeds with the Alcaraz match, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone, use their second serve that effectively, for so long. Like, from, like, the middle-ish of the second set, like, right up until the match point, he basically hit 2 first serves, and never really paid the price for it. Like, if people, like, haven't seen the match in full, watch the highlights. On the match point, the serve he hits is a second serve, and it's, like,
Mhm.
115 miles an hour and lands, like, an inch from the tee. Um, this is one reason why I'm not really, I kinda disagree with quite a lot of the criticisms of Alcaraz for his performance against Djokovic because I'm like, I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do against that, when when the other guy is hitting his second serve like a first serve and landing it with pinpoint accuracy over a prolonged period of time, and also, like, hitting the ball off the ground the way he was. Like, I thought Djokovic's return had kinda, like, gone down a clear step, and then in this match, he wins, like, 67% of the second serve return points. Like,
Yeah,
it was an unreal performance, like, for those last 3 sets, and I have kinda, like, conflicting thoughts about, what you should be able to do in a medical timeout or, like, I don't know how I feel about, players, like, being able to, like, go off court for 10 minutes and get evaluated and then, like, take medication and then come back. I think that kinda, like, undermines the individuality of the sport a little bit, and I think at the very least, like, if you are gonna be able to do that, the opponent should get to, should get to, like, be informed of what just happened because, like, I don't blame Alcaraz for sort of, like, taking his foot off the gas a little bit, when, like, how are you supposed to know that the other guy is, like, um, on a bunch of painkillers and, like, can't feel his leg anymore, when you're, like, waiting for him to slow down, like, but, yeah, I mean, Djokovic, like, I thought that performance was incredible. I thought it was better than the Olympics, better than and so, yeah, by extension, better than anything he did last year, um, I mean, but yeah, again, like, every recovery from the new injury is gonna be, like, that much harder as you get older, so,
for sure. Yeah.
I don't know, it kinda felt to me like and I felt this way so many times before, but it kinda felt to me like the last time we're gonna see an effort like that from him.
Yeah, that could make sense too. Speaking of like you mentioned obviously Alcaraz and how Djokovic played against him, but in the Olympics match as well. But Djokovic has like I believe like a 5-3 record against Alcaraz now.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think of that? Like, do you feel like Alcaraz is still going to make up for the difference? Do you think that there's like a mini rivalry there? Like, what are your thoughts on that head to head? Really?
It's a great question because, like, it sorta seemed like Alcaraz was doing well against him, and then Djokovic has now won 4 of the last 5, which I think is more concerning than the 5-3. Like,
Yeah.
I think so, I think Djokovic has continued to be, like, perform at a really high level, and I don't think any of his his wins over Alcaraz have been, like, cheap, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, I don't think, like, I don't look at any of them and think like, "Oh, man, Alcaraz, like, he can't even beat, like, an old Djokovic,"
Yeah.
because I think if you saw the level, Djokovic has played at in those wins, that's just, like, completely the wrong takeaway. Um, but, yeah, I think I do think, like, the Olympics was one that got away a little bit, and this one being of the set, it it does not look great on paper, but I think that given how well Djokovic played, I can kind of excuse it. I think if he loses the next one as well, I may kind of reevaluate those, but yeah, again, I think I kinda see this one differently from most people. Like, I don't think I think Alcaraz, quote, unquote, like, taking his foot off Djokovic's neck when Djokovic was hurt, like, playing an injured Djokovic who is still competing at a very high level, I don't think that has ever ended well for any player. And so I don't really buy the idea that Alcaraz, like, should have done better there. Like, I think when you're playing an injured opponent, it's a psychological thing more than a tennis thing.
Mhm.
And Djokovic is better at playing through injury than
Yeah.
anyone in history, on top of being a better player than anyone in history. So it's like, uh, it's not as easy as it sounds to like, just like, keep your foot on the gas. But yeah, I mean, there's no question that like 5-3, it does not look good for Alcaraz. And I think I think honestly, this is becoming as big a thing that separates Djokovic from Federer and Nadal than anything else is like to have a rivalry this like developed and extensive with and high quality with like the next generation and to be like winning more than you're losing. That's insane. Um so like I mean massive kudos to Djokovic for that. Yeah, what do you think? Is this like a should it be like crisis mode for Alcaraz or do you or do you see it the same way as me?
I think you really put it, like, in good words. I feel like it definitely is concerning in the sense, like, how Alcaraz didn't I think it's like you said, like, 1 and 4 in the last, like, 5 meetings, something like
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, like, that's definitely something that Alcaraz should be looking at and just trying to evaluate because obviously, like, his main rival that he should obviously kind of be focusing on, for the future is Sinner. Like, that is obviously he's obviously the player that he should like expect to encounter often in the future of his career. Like for the next 10 years, Djokovic is not going to be there, like 48 years old. Um,
Right.
but at the same time, it's just like you have to. He needs to find more ways. Like, and I don't know if hopefully for him, or maybe not so sure, but like in terms of like this rivalry, hopefully for Alcaraz, he's going to find Djokovic. At a higher level again, and not necessarily, like, injured or, like, slowed down by age, 'cause then, like, his wins are going to be, less meaningful, I would say, and if Alcaraz could, like, get, like, a super big win against Djokovic, like Djokovic got against Alcaraz, like, here at the Australian Open or back in that Cincinnati final, the Masters final, I feel like,
Mhm.
Alcaraz would really benefit from, beating Djokovic in a high level match. And, even if the head-to-head finishes negative for Alcaraz, even if he wins, like, the last match that they play to bring it
Yeah.
5-4 and it's a high level match and Alcaraz wins it, I think it's to Alcaraz's benefit that he can just say, like, close this chapter in, like, the old generation and, like, I've come and I've played against, like, the last of the big 3, the greatest of them, and I've made it extremely competitive, and I won my share. Whereas, like, if he doesn't do this, like, I hopefully, at least he doesn't come in with doubts in terms of his career of, like, how great he is because he's an amazing player.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like you don't you when Djokovic retires, you don't wanna have like big regrets about how you played him and be worrying
Yeah,
about Sinner at
exactly.
the same time, right? I mean, all that said, like and also like I think if Alcaraz never beats him on a hard court, which he hasn't yet, he's 0-2, I believe, maybe 0-3.
Mm,
Um, that I think that's not great either. Like you definitely want
yeah,
to win on all the surfaces. Um,
for sure.
but like that said, like I think beating him the first time you play it in, like, a third set tiebreak, and then beating him in 2 Wimbledon finals, like, it's pretty good. Um,
Yeah,
so I think even if I agree that he will have regrets if that's all he gets. I think, like, that already is, like, better than anyone else was able to do. I get said Sinner has, like, done a better job at, like, "figuring him out," quote, unquote, but also, um, I think his passing of the torch moment, like that Australian Open semifinal, he got a much worse version of Djokovic and hasn't really played him in hasn't really beaten him in a super consequential match besides that.
yeah, it's true.
So, so I think Sinner won't have the same regrets, but his wins over Djokovic haven't been as, like, as flashy, I guess I would say. Um,
Yeah,
but, yeah, like, I really hope they do play a couple more times, and I hope, yeah, like, I think that's the biggest reason this one will sting for Alcaraz is because, like, he could have made it 4-4, and he could have, um then he would have had a win over Djokovic at both of Djokovic's best slams, um, and that would have been, like, a real thing he could have, like, hung his hat on, but yeah, um, now it's like you can sort of, like, feel the Djokovic fan base already, like, commenting 10 years down the line when Alcaraz wins, like, his 15th major or something, like, "Oh, he's still at a losing head-to-head against Novak," right? So, like, that's not something that you want if you're trying to become one of the GOATs.
yeah, which is absolutely wild too, because like you said, like, if Alcaraz wins his 15th major, he's still 9 majors under Djokovic, which is
Yeah.
crazy to think about. So, yeah, like, yeah, all this, like, career and, like, GOATness aside, like, yeah, definitely, entertainment value, Djokovic and Alcaraz do bring it. So, I feel like it would be really great to see them going at it again. So yeah.
Yep. And then I guess the last thing I'll say is, like, uh, on, like, the GOAT stuff, I totally understand if, and, like, I am personally, like, disappointed in Alcaraz's form, for basically, like, most of the last season season plus, excluding, like, the 5 weeks when he went, like, supersonic and, like, won the channel level, but, in terms of, like, "Oh, like, this means he's never gonna be as good as, like, whoever," if we think back to Djokovic, like, in 2018, which was 6.5 years ago, Djokovic had 12 majors. Um,
Mm,
so, like, these things happen in waves, and they can also happen, like, very quickly. Like, if sort of like we were saying about Coco, it's like, when you're when you're this young, especially, and you kinda go for a little while without winning a major, like, we don't have to make these, like, sweeping predictions about, like, "Oh, this means he or she is never gonna hit, like, this mark." Like like, if Alcaraz happens to win the channel double again, I feel like people are gonna be singing, like, a very different tune. Um,
yeah,
or, or if, like, say he doesn't win one for the next 2 years and then wins 3 in a row, it's like the same thing is gonna happen. It's gonna be like everyone's gonna be, um, doomering until he starts winning again, and then everyone's gonna sing his praises. So I feel like we can keep it in perspective that, like,
for sure,
this doesn't mean he's necessarily, like, worse than anybody thought or, like, it's he's still so early in his career, so we can just kinda evaluate the performances as performances.
for sure. Yeah, totally. So yeah, I guess that's the talk. Australian Open obviously gives us a lot of things to ponder about after the season's over, and lots of great talks. And let us know. Obviously, like hit us in our social media. On Blue Sky, you can find Owen. I think it's what's your Owen Sports? Owen Sports at
Yeah.
dot Blue Sky. The Blue Sky thing, you can find Owen there. You cannot find him anymore on Twitter. But you can still find Tennis Bagels, Vansh, and myself there. Um, I'll leave all the links in the description. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please comment down below, like if you have any opinions, if you disagree or you agree with what we're saying. Um, we're always down for conversation. And yeah, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for sticking around for this hour and 20 minutes. And we'll see you guys next time. See ya. Bye.